I call to order the April meeting of the Homewood Board of Zoning Adjustments. Mr. Goodwin, can we have the roll call, please?
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Alsabrook.
Here.
Mr. Perkle.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Roberts.
Here.
Mr. Gear. Ms. Childs. And Ms. Hand.
Here.
All right, a quorum's present.
Next, we'll move on to the minutes. Have we had a chance to look at these? Great. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have any communications from the vice chair?
I do not.
And I do not have any communications either. We will now move on to old business. Let's do BZA case SV-23-04-01103 Morris Boulevard.
And as indicated in the agenda, that particular case was carried over until today's meeting, but the applicant withdrew that original case, and it is represented under new business tonight, but that first case has been withdrawn, so the...
Great, thank you for pointing that out.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll then move on to BZA case SV-23-04-021522 Roseland Drive. Please come and sign in and then speak into the mic.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Justin Jones. I'm here on behalf of Richard Yerger and Steve Camp regarding the property over at Roseland Drive. I was actually here last meeting regarding a different property, but got to be present for some of the feedback that you had given when they made the previous application, and appreciate the chance to be here tonight. As I understood it, there seemed to be three issues that were related to the issue of this particular property from our previous conversation. The first had to do with the impervious ground cover. And as you can see on some revised plans here, there was a parking pad initially that was on the previous plans. We removed that, and in doing so, we are in full compliance with less than 50% of the front yard, with ours being at 43%, less than 30% of the back, with ours being at 27.2%, and the overall lot being less than 50%, with ours being at 49.8%. So we should be in compliance there. There was concern as well about water, with this being right next to the creek. This home has been designed to be built on piers, which allows for water to flow through rather than to be trapped and potentially raise the water level. So this plan is a no-rise plan and would not contribute negatively to the water level as shown from the report that we included from our civil engineer. And lastly, as far as any suggested impact on the rock wall, we had the chance to meet with Robbie Tolbert, local licensed structural engineer, who designed a foundation plan to ensure that added pressure would be vertical, not lateral. So 11 caissons will be drilled into the rock bed on the right side of the wall as a means of just ensuring that it would not be impacted. It's our belief that there is a legitimate hardship in this situation, given that the lot is 56 feet wide. We are left with 36 feet to build on with the 10-foot setbacks on both sides. By most standards, that would be considered a narrow house, especially when you consider that the previous version of the home was actually 43 feet wide. Should also be noted that on our plans, we have brought the left side of the home into full compliance with the setbacks from the previous version being 5 feet out of compliance. We are asking for a 6.5-foot variance, which is only an additional 1.5 feet more than what the previous footprint of the home had.
This is a public meeting. If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak, now is your time. Please come forward and you can sign in. Please state your name and where you live.
Joe Stevens, 1513 Valley Place.
Thank you.
He referenced an engineering study, but that wasn't available in the meeting prep documents. Is that somehow available to us to review? If that's going to be part of this decision?
Ask that again, I'm sorry.
So he referenced an engineering study that has been, I guess, completed prior, or since the last meeting?
It was completed before the last meeting.
It's part of the documentation that's already out?
Shoal's letter is.
Shoal's letter,
Yeah,
okay.
But he also provided a structural drawing
Okay.
from a structural engineer.
Is that in there as well?
I'm not sure if it's included in the packet, but we have a copy of it.
Okay. Okay, I guess that, simply put, kind of the same issues we had last time with the flooding videos that we provided. I appreciate the difficulties of building in that particular area in our community. We own a lot that has 3 different flood level designations on one lot, which is kind of insane when you think about the width. So around our area, it is a problem already. And I appreciate with the floodgates and everything, and we already have another house at the end of the street that has similar setup and was kind of designed similar way with the pylons and stuff to allow closer to the wall and stuff. But I mean, I'm still back to the point where this house, even with the flood mitigation on the foundation, is still gonna back up water more so in the future than it already is into our yard, regardless. I mean, water's gonna flow by that house quickly, grab what it can, and build back up inside of there. It's a narrow way. And I know that, and I'm back to the other point too, which is I still, other than profitability, I still haven't heard a hardship, in my opinion. The flood regulations are not a hardship. It's something we all have to deal with. My wife and I had plans drawn for our house recently, and we had to comply with all that. And the architect did an excellent job. And we believe, I guess maybe we might find out differently when our time comes, but our procedure and process in this was follow the rules, and I'm not really certain what the hardship is, why that lot behind us shouldn't be held to the same standard and mitigate the potential increase in flooding in our backyard as it already stands. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this case? We have now closed the public part of this hearing. If you can come back up, and now we'll open this up to the board for questions. Would you like to address what was just said and the concerns?
With regards to the water, I mean, our goal, we certainly believe if a fence was built, that has the potential to potentially trap water in, but I think we've gone to great lengths to really speak to exactly what those concerns are. And we believe, based on what we've been told from a civil engineer, that what we would potentially do would not be problematic. And so we believe that we've got someone who speaks to these matters and is able to do so, saying that actually is not going to be the problem that he believes. So with respect, we've gone to great lengths to try to avoid that.
What do you think about what he mentioned about having a narrow lot and the neighbors also having a narrow lot and being able to build within compliance?
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously Homewood, I mean, there's the potential to have narrow lots. We're more or less trying to work within the existing footprint, so to shrink the house even more when we had, with smaller than what we had previously. What we don't want to do is to build the house backwards, so much so that now all of a sudden we're compromising the back portion of the lot in order to get the square footage, but now we have a very narrow house that doesn't necessarily provide the backyard that I think most of you would want as well. So, and I would also add that you know, we've worked. Our goal is try actually on the left side of the house. We've fixed the problem, which is that we weren't in compliance from before. But in order to do that, there's some course correction that would need to take place on the right side.
Can you clarify for us the reasoning for a new build versus building on the existing foundation?
We didn't want to build on the existing foundation because of the water issue that we had from before. We needed to, in light of the floodplain issue, we were going to build on piers and to do something that was going to be acceptable from FEMA standpoint and something that ultimately you'd approve. So.
You said earlier that you were deciding where to put this house, like layout. You're trying to, I guess, meet that square footage goal. Is that part of your consideration? What was that goal? I see the lot coverage of the house. What's the planned square footage?
The planned square footage is, I believe, roughly around 3,500. I don't have the plans, unfortunately, in front of me. But yeah, I mean, I think we're somewhere in that ballpark between 3,500 and 4,000 square feet total.
Oh, including both levels?
I'm sorry?
Including both levels?
Including both levels, yes, ma'am. I would say that's comparable to most of the sort of new construction or renovations that are taking place in the general area, so.
Have you all looked at keeping it within the setbacks?
We have explored that, but we would definitely have to redraw plans, and we believe it would be very much a compromised, very, very narrow house, given we only have a 36 feet to essentially do that if we were to do it within the setbacks, so. And essentially, we're at 40 feet right now with the current plans that we've drawn up. So we're actually a smaller house in terms of width than it was previously. It was actually 43 feet before. So we've actually taken some lengths to make it a little bit smaller than before.
Do you know, is the adjacent house to the left same width lot?
I'm not certain what the one to the left is in terms of how far it goes across.
Remind me, this is owned by a developer?
It is. A gentleman by the name of Richard Yerger, Whitefish Holdings. He is the owner.
Great.
So.
I'll make a motion here for, to approve case SV 04-02, which is 1522 Roseland Drive as presented.
Second.
All right. Mr. Alsabrook,
No.
Mr. Perkel,
No.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Roberts, and Ms. Hand.
No, your request for variance has been denied. Thank you. That ends our old business, and now we'll move on to new business. We're gonna do BZA case SV-23-05-01, 103 Morris Boulevard.
Hey, good evening. My name is Jeremy Hackney. I'm one of the property owners and contractors for 103 Morris Boulevard. We are requesting a variance on the right front corner as well as the both rear corners of the house. We have a very irregular lot shape, which we would consider a non-typical lot. So we have reduced the footprint of the house as much as possible, rotated it on the lot as well to get that right front setback back into compliance. We're in kind of a curve of the street as well, which gives us ample room on the left side of the property for the front setback, but it makes it short on the right front setback. And then our new plan, I'm not sure, the new plan shows that we're only asking for an 8-foot setback on the right rear and left rear. So we've got roughly from front to back a lot, we've got about a 70% decrease in width. From where we're proposing the house plan to be, we've got roughly a 20% decrease in lot width from front of house to rear of house. So that's about what we're asking for in a 2-foot variance, is 20% reduction of that setback.
Great, are you done?
I'm done.
Perfect. We'll move on to the public portion of this hearing. If there's anybody from the audience or the public who would like to speak on this case, now is your chance. As it seems like no one is here, we can now open this up to questions from the board.
It looks like the front of the house, you're asking to put it exactly where it is now, where the existing structure.
Very, very close. Yeah, we've actually twisted that, so it's giving us a little bit more, from front to back on the right front setback, and it puts us in compliance on the right side's front setback as far, just by, I think, about 7 inches. But it's still, based on the lot shape towards the back, we're still very narrow on that lot. So,
Just to understand, you said you were able, by twisting it, are you saying you don't need the front setback variance anymore?
yes, we do. We're listed for the front setback, but it's reduced from what it was from our last request. So on this request, we're requesting 35.4 inches. So we've got plenty of room on the left, but based on the shape of the road and the distance from the front of the house and the adjacent houses, that 35.4 is as close as we could get it without making the house awkwardly shaped on the lot, awkwardly placed on the lot.
Looks like you at least tried with the shape of the house, kind of.
We did. We tried to step it in as much as we could, and we went longer where we could, but
Not only is it kind of an odd-shaped lot, it's, the two sides are angled at different angles.
Correct.
It's not really kind of a pie shape, it's more,
correct.
I see how that could be
we twisted it, I mean, you can tell, I mean, it's very slight, but you can tell the house is kind of twisted a little bit towards the right, where you see the shape of the driveway, the existing driveway there near the property line. So we just slightly twisted it around, but we need those 2 feet just to get within compliance.
Looks to me, my vision's not the best, but looks to me that the two corners where the variance request maxes out 2 feet, that's just like 1 point, it actually tapers off of that. So we're kind of a small portion of the house.
It is, it's a very small portion of those back corners.
It's not a whole wall that's,
No, sir.
you know,
Yeah.
that's across the setback.
No,
It's
sir.
just a shot.
May I ask if you had the opportunity to move the house back the 2.8 feet further into the lot? What would your dimensions, have y'all looked into that as far as seeing what your dimensions would be on the
It
left and right?
does, it does, and based on the shape of the lot, it just keeps getting smaller as we go back. So we would have to greatly reduce the entire width of the house even further on that. And we're trying to leave as much impervious ground in the back as we can for the backyard. There's a really big tree, old tree in front of the house that, you know, we don't want to disturb. We don't want to add any more work to on the front as possible. So if we could use the placement of the house as it is, we feel like we can get the best out of the lot that way.
One more question in regards to your layout of your bottom floor. On the left side of the house, where you have an 8-foot variance or dimension there between your property, I'm seeing a broom closet right there out of the laundry room. And what I'm trying to find out is this something that can, like we talked about, to remove a front variance request, if you were to shift back, would that change up your side dimensions?
We would just have to bring that side of the house more forward. So we would just reduce the footprint of just that one corner. If that, what you're talking about on the left side where off the laundry room and that
Off the
broom
laundry
closet?
room, because there seems to be some, that's just something I was just looking at here.
Yeah, and that's the side of the lot that is the most aggressive on
Right there.
the shape.
Yeah.
I like to have a broom room myself, but
But I think even if you lopped off that broom closet, you still have some variance, you need for something, whether it's
Yeah.
right.
a foot and a half or something.
But you may be able to alleviate the front variance request of the 2'8".
If we push it back too much further from on that front variance request, we're not going to be in line with the adjacent houses as well. It would sit back further off the road.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve case SV 23-05-01, address 103 Morris Boulevard as presented here at the BZA meeting.
Second.
All right. Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes. Your request for variance has been approved. You have 180 days to pull your permit.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next case is BZA case FV-23-05-02-307 Ridge Road.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for reviewing my case. My name is Ryan Shirley, and I live at 307 Ridge Road. My wife, Carlene, and I, we bought the place back last summer. We moved in, and we've basically been baby-proofing the house, making upgrades to increase the safety for our toddler and possible future children. My wife's a pediatrician. I'm a safety professional, so we take hazards very seriously that impact children. We do our best to mitigate them. One major concern that that keeps us up at night is the steep slope toward Ridge Road from the front of our property and the 5-foot drop off from the retaining wall in the front of the property. We have to pass by these hazards to get into the front entrance of the house. We are requesting a variance for the front yard fence to put a barrier between our toddler and these hazards. Of note, neighbors on either side have offered their support. They've, via text message and verbally in conversations, they think it's a really good idea. And to my knowledge, there's no known opposition to the plan. The fence itself, if you could understand where it is, it's not going to obstruct the view of any drivers as they're driving by to any other street. So the fence itself won't pose a hazard to other drivers. If you look at the construction of the fence, it's you can tell definitively that it's not meant for privacy. It's not meant for security. It's designed to, the style of fence is designed to prevent toddlers from hazards. So be 33 inches high. It's going to be painted to match the trim of the house. There'll be 3 gates to the fence. There'll be a main entry gate. Another gate that I'm considering a neighbor gate. We love our neighbors. We want them to come see us. And then a gate to the rear of the house. Each one of those gates is 36 inches wide or wider. That's really all I have to present on this.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience? This is a public hearing. Now is your time. And no one is here. And so now we'll open this up for questions from the board. So what is your backyard like? Is there a reason you could not keep your toddler and hang out in the backyard?
Oh, yeah. Well, their backyard, there's a slope there as well. But the key is, imagine, coming in, you've got a toddler trying to wriggle out of your hands. We want to expand our family. We have to walk through that area. My son is very active, and he's trying to get down. He's trying to run out, to Ridge Road. He's trying to explore. He's trying to, he's being a toddler. So the idea was to put a control in place that would prevent him from, while of course we watch him, but a control to prevent him from running into the Ridge Road.
Yeah. I wonder though, that doesn't necessarily, the fence doesn't necessarily prevent him from running into Ridge Road. He could still be in the driveway and run into Ridge Road. So the
Yes.
fence doesn't necessarily solve that problem. And even I know it's a hassle, but what if you exit it through the garage? Then that would eliminate at least him running through that open yard.
Yeah, the garage is very, very narrow. They made it, previous owners have made an expansion in there, and so the garage is very, very tight. We would, there's no room for lawnmower and walking, basically. To me, that would be Oh.
There's not enough room for a person to exit your garage?
Well, as a primary entry and exit, you would come into the garage, you would go into the basement, you would walk up a very narrow stairs that, I mean, it's really a basement. So
Yeah.
you walk up and, you know, I'm not a tall man, but I hit my head on the top of the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not a good primary entry and exit to the house.
I'd
But-
like to ask staff real quick if typically a front fence, can you share that information with, is that something that the Homewood typically would allow, or is this just
No.
a?
It's very uncommon.
So, and I think I explained this to Mr. Kramer also. So this is the first front yard fence case that these guys have heard. Front yard fence is just, we redid the ordinance to move it into the zoning ordinance, which is why it's here tonight. The city council typically only approved front yard fence in the case that there was a child with special needs living in the home or an elderly parent, possibly, and then they would proffer at the time that the child got a certain age or that they moved from the house, the fence would have to come down. In my experience, that's the only time they have allowed front yard fences.
Thank you.
And there is precedent, the Homewood Star, there's someone who put up a fence without going through the proper procedure. That fence was voted in if they remove it afterwards. But some people were angry about that, and they interviewed some of the council members at the time, and they said, you know, special needs, right? That's a flight risk. You come out of the house, toddlers do that. They are likely to wake up in the middle of the night, walk out the front door, and go out into the street. Or for situations like this where you have a steep slope. So the council members were quoted as that's a precedent for that. If you look at most of the homes in Homewood, 8% of them would not qualify for this type of variance based on their lot. I mean, it's a flat lot, or there's not a major hazard there. So here, I think I'm presenting maybe the 2 or 3% of homes that would meet that precedent that the council had previously, at least the Homewood Star reported on. And of those, maybe, 5–10% may want a fence variance. So I think it's a very small number of people who would come and ask you for a front yard fence and be eligible for this type of hazard.
Yeah. So, I hate to point this out, so you purchased this last year having had a toddler and knowing these hazards, were you not concerned about it when you purchased the house?
So with the market last year, we were in Charleston. We're from Alabama. We moved to Charleston. We've come back. With the market the way it was of June of 2022, we actually had to buy the house sight unseen. So we bid on multiple houses, 15 homes, bid way over asking price, and this was the home that we were able to get.
So, I mean, I think we just saw a Google Street View and we saw how steep things were. Was that, you weren't aware of that at all? You didn't
Well,
look?
definitely not aware of regulations in Homewood.
Oh, you were unaware that fences were not allowed?
Right. And not until I went through this process and started looking around, not seeing front yard fences, and doing, a lot of research. Homewood Star was the, what I found about it. Right, so that would be it. And so there would be a possibility to mitigate the risk with this process. So that was kind of our thinking.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mr. Shirley, we've seen photos. I'm familiar with this street. I live 2 houses to your right, although that house hasn't gotten much bigger since I lived in it. So I'm kind of familiar with the slope there. I think it's a little less where you are than where I was, but that's a different story. But staff has pointed out the house to your, I guess that's to your south, has a gate. It has a similar situation with the drop-off, and they have not a gate, a guard. an approved type of guard that's not considered a fence. I'm sure you're familiar with what we're talking about. It's up on the screen right now. Is that something you've considered? If safety is a concern, is that something you've considered to mitigate the hazards you believe you're facing?
Yeah, Kale was very nice to explain. I figured there was a regulation. This is a 5-foot high retaining wall. I assumed there was a regulation, and Kale pointed that out to me. That regulation came into effect well after my retaining wall was built. It was original to the house. It's 80 years old. It wasn't designed to have something, to have a rail bolted down to it. Could it have 80 years ago? Possibly. But, you know, to really redo the, to successfully put a rail on top of that retaining wall, you would need to disassemble the retaining wall. It's 70 foot of retaining wall total, and at 5 foot high would be a major engineering, undertaking. And then on top of that, you can see that large oak tree. That's probably 80, 100-year-old oak tree. You can imagine that needs to come down. You would need to chop that down. Otherwise, you're gonna put up disassemble a retaining wall that's working, put up a new retaining wall, and have the roots pushing on that retaining wall. You're gonna be, you're gonna have you're gonna ruin your retaining wall. So the retaining wall is working. But it's 80 years old. It's not gonna be able to withstand fencing or a rail. So my thought is, I need a variance. We need a variance here. That's my request. It's a really nice wall. I mean, it's got a lot of character. It's stone. It's got a very thin cap of concrete on top of it, but that's not going to withstand bolting a rail on.
Would it have to be bolted to it? Could it not be mounted alongside, on the inside, on the grass side?
Well, yeah, then I'm back at a fence, right?
No, it would still, you would like attach it to the wall and not put it into the wall.
You could offset your post and set the post on the back side.
On the back side?
Still a guardrail, but just
Okay.
not the fence.
Okay, so that's great, okay. So that's basically, I built a fence along that wall, pretty much. Well, we're calling it a rail, okay.
It's a guard.
It's a guard.
It would meet the standards for the guard.
Definition of a guard.
Like the metal ones that are on the other houses, on the other walls, that is what the building code requires for those.
Right, exactly.
But he still wouldn't be able to put it on those two other edges that he
Right,
wants to.
right.
Yeah,
I'm
that would
just- I'm
solve
just
a third of the
suggesting-
problem, right?
I'm just suggesting for the wall.
Would the board consider if you're not excited about this, would the board consider sunsetting? There's been precedent for that as well. Sunsetting the variance to when we move out, or, 15 years or 20 years or whatever, sunset you want to set. Would the board consider that?
I don't necessarily think that it would be 20 years if we said that, more like
And
10.
how would you regulate that?
I mean, how old does the kid
So
stop
if you
running away
say,
from you?
if you were to say, you can have this fence for 3 years, what's gonna happen in 3 years? Are you gonna go to his house and force him to take it down? I just don't know that that is an enforceable thing.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not being repetitive, but would you be open to the idea of adding the safety guardrail?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way they've described it just here, I understood it differently, I think, previously. I thought it had to be bolted on top of, but if we're talking about it needs to, can be adjacent, then, you know, I can work with.
Immediately adjacent to, yeah.
Okay, we can work with the, you know, your team to
And
figure
that's
that out.
something that you can just come in and speak with the building official
Right,
about and just,
right.
and get a permit, just walk in and get a permit for that.
Yeah. So, but still, it goes back to, it's really only part of the issue here. The other part is the steep slope.
Mr. Stewart, you have anything? Okay. I take a motion to approve case FV 23-05-02. It's 307 Ridge Road as presented tonight.
Second.
All right. Mr. Alsobrook,
No.
Mr. Perkel,
No.
Mr. Johnson,
No.
Mr. Roberts,
No.
and Ms. Hand.
No. Your request for variance has been denied, but you could still talk to Mr. Smith and Ms. Williams, and they can help you with the guardrail.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Our last case is BZA case DV-23-05-03-914 Oak Grove Road.
Good evening. We are here on, or I'm here on behalf of Trinity Church, trying to get 3 variances to build a storage unit over at Trinity Church in West Homewood. The 3 variances, if I remember correctly, are to remove the landscape buffer for this project. Do it. Well, you probably, the verbiage is what gets me more than anything.
She wants to make sure you said eliminate.
Oh, yeah, my name's David Siegel. I did. So the first request we're asking for is a variance to the buffer strip to eliminate buffering required along the north and the west properties. It's a large piece of property, and we are wanting to buffer only basically behind the building that's there, beginning at the southwest property corner, extending east approximately 340 feet. The second variance we're asking for is to amend the definition of the buffer strip so that we can put a 6-foot privacy fence in place of a landscape buffer there. We believe it won't be maintained properly, and we think this would be something that would be pleasing to the neighbors. If you go back there, there's some chain link fence back there, there's partial fencing back there, but there's not really a true fence back there. We think that will actually create a better buffer for them. And the last is exemption to all sections of the tree protection and landscape variance. Did I get them right? Thank you. We would like to use an okay, thank you. We would like to use a fence instead of the landscape buffer.
I wish they could let us change the definitions of things in the zoning ordinance, but we don't have that authority.
There's too many words. It's stressing me out. I'm sorry.
Wonderful. We will now open this up to the public. If there's anyone out there who would like to speak, feel free to come up. If you're feeling a little shy.
I think everybody here is on behalf of all 3 of these.
Okay, then, did they want to say anything? No?
I think they're tired.
Okay, that's great. So we'll close the public portion of this hearing and open it up to the board. Questions from the board?
Is the chain link on the church property or the neighbors?
I'm pretty sure, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm David Thompson. I'm one of the pastors at Trinity. William, I think it's, because, I'm pretty sure it's on the neighbors because that fence changes down, so some of it's a little bit further one of the neighbors has a wooden fence, privacy fence, and these two that are immediately behind it have a chain link.
With the wood fence, that's a drainage swale, it looks like?
It
So
is.
would you put your fence at their fence, or would it be on,
At their fence, yes.
at their fence?
And we'll talk to each one of the neighbors and face the pretty side their way, and, you know, if they want us to remove the rear of the chain link fence while we're doing it, we're happy to do that as well.
Mr. Johnson, the survey looks like it's on the neighbor's side of the property line.
And so any fencing that they installed would have to be on the church's property, couldn't.
Yeah.
Correct, but to answer your question, we would want to put it right on the edge.
But not.
Right.
I was present for the Planning Commission meeting last month, so I have a pretty good understanding of what you're trying to do. I think in looking at the way the variances are worded, particularly the first part and the third part, and again, I know the spirit of what you're after is get a variance to allow you to buffer just the portion that goes up against the buildings that are already there, and not to.
Correct. Sight lines.
Right.
Yeah.
The way the way the variance request is written, it would exempt, I guess, in perpetuity, any requirement for any sort of buffering going all the way around. I think part of the concern is that we don't know what's gonna happen 100 years from now, much less 10
Sure.
years from now, with a growing church and expanding, you know, missions, whatever, that something else could be built somewhere else on the property, and then you have this exemption from any sort of buffering, which you're trying to do right now for a new building. So I think that was part of our concern. that the-
For just this project, right? Sure. Yeah.
But I think there's a workaround for that.
I think we'd be happy to proffer that it's only for
Okay.
this project.
And I think what we would ultimately vote on is a variance to allow you to build to the development plan that you submitted last month, that's specific to the changes in the development plan.
Okay.
Anything in the future, you know, whatever you wanted to build back there. you
Yeah,
know,
it was my understanding we'd have to come back through anyways, but I do see your
Right.
point. If this variance got granted, that would not necessarily be the case as far as for these requests that we're making.
In the same with respect to the landscape and tree, or tree protection landscape ordinance, circumstances could change to make that.
Absolutely.
Much more important for that to be complied with, or complied with to some extent that some future board that I won't be on will decide. So I think that's when you hear us proffering, or you're making a motion to approve this case, we're gonna be asking, or asking for a vote on a variance to allow essentially you to build what you're talking about building in the development plan, the amended development plan, if that makes sense.
It does, sir.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? David, we talked about this, but just to get it here, there was a stormwater concern in the Planning Commission meeting, and downspouts are gonna be all rerouted to.
Yes, we were incorrect in that meeting. A couple of downspouts we thought were running towards the street are not. And so we did, I don't know if we proffered in that meeting or what, but we did agree in that meeting that we would be happy to run all of the gutter drainage to the front. We do have a non-adverse impact letter already, but we figured getting as much water as we can to the parking area would prevent, you know, mushy conditions and stuff in the rear of this property, or the rear of this building.
Great, thank you.
One question I had is, will the fence hold any protection for security, or is this just for the buffer?
It's just for the buffer, no gates, anything, just
Okay.
for the buffer.
A question. You said in your variance request that, you wanted to do a 6-foot tall privacy fence inlet. The code allows for an 8-foot fence on a non-residential property. I just didn't know if you said 6 feet, because that's what you usually deal with, or if.
I think we said 6 feet because that's pretty standard. We rarely, in the residential world, we rarely do 8 foot. Now, if that's something y'all would like for us to consider, aesthetically, I don't particularly like the way they look, but if that's something that's of concern to y'all, we would be willing for it to be 8 foot. I would prefer it to be 6 foot because I do think it looks better, but if y'all are worried about the aesthetics of it, I would be happy to build that fence taller.
Is it just kind of a standard 5/8 inch dog ear?
Dog ear, just straight.
So
And that
that-
would be tying into several fences that are on adjacent sides of it.
8 foot would actually probably not hold up.
But they, you know, they may have to change the design of the fence for it. I just heard there was concern about how much was being covered. So that was the only thing I brought it up.
So
Yeah, it
the
looks
con-
like one of the neighbors, we'd be tying back into the fence that you can't really see, but there's a 6-foot dog-eared fence right there, basically where that mouse is. Somebody's put posts in, but they haven't really completed that fence yet. And then the other property, or maybe property or two, is chain link going the other direction. So I think 6 foot would be in keeping, but once again, ultimate goal is for y'all to say yes. So if we need to make it 8 foot, we're happy to consider.
It's on Street View, Brian, on Oak Grove. You can see it a little better.
Ms. Williams, was the concern that 6 feet was too low, or that they wanted 8 feet? The person who communicated that?
Before,
Yeah.
we were just discussing how high could the fence be and what is the requirement for a landscape buffer and those kind of things. And so I was just throwing that out there. It was an option. You know, the building code does allow for update. And I just didn't
Yeah.
know if they had put 6 feet, because that's what we deal with as residential
Yeah.
builders.
To clarify, there was no one saying, hey, I wish that they had 8 feet. It's just,
Not to
you
my
have the
knowledge.
option to.
And the buildings themselves are much taller than even 8 feet. You know, it's not gonna effectively screen the building.
Correct. You're supposed to see the
26
building.
feet tall.
Screen it from the adjacent properties.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it's just something to consider. And it wouldn't have to be a change that they made, it would be something that you could require if you wanted to, because the building code allows it.
Yeah. I think that's maybe a matter of opinion between board members, if we like 6 feet fences or 8-foot fences. I like 6 feet. Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah. Yes, that's it. And so essentially, it would be just continuing that fence down.
So you'll be doing that guy a favor and finishing his fence.
Yes, the one neighbor, yes.
Sounds good.
If it were 8 foot, you would see it from your neighbors. You'd see 2 fences, which could become a little bit.
Yeah, more of an eyesore.
Yeah, a lot of them don't even have fences, so, you know, it was just an option.
Yeah.
Am I clear in understanding that actually adding that fence would be a continuation for a number of lots of a wooden
It
fence for
would,
them?
it would carry, the fence that's on that property that faces Oak Grove, their fence is complete, but it would carry 2 properties past that.
So it's nice.
How far past the last building? Are you stopping at the building or going beyond?
I need to grab my notes. Do you have that? Here, let me see if I got it. Yes, it's this and this.
So it ties into, there's a fence that wraps around the metal building, right?
I don't believe so.
The
No.
building on the
No,
right.
it's got landscaping behind it.
No, but like runs parallel with the side of the building.
There's about,
There's no fence over there. You can walk around that metal building.
oh, no,
Oh,
no.
never mind, that's
Yeah.
On the front lot,
Oh,
on the
yeah.
parking lot now, there is one.
But if you're looking at, it's right here. I mean, it's between lots
I
4
don't know
and
if it's
5.
talking up here.
Oh, yeah. Got back here. But this doesn't go all the way to here, does it? Yeah.
Would you consider extending it to that property line, your adjacent, so it's not stopping halfway on their property?
Oh, yes,
It
we would, I don't know which one you're looking at, but we would continue it through lots 3 and 4
Oh,
to
to
carry
the
it all the way to that far corner. Yeah, and I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure lot 5 already has a 6-foot privacy fence on it. It's the, lots 3 is the one with a partially, and lot 4 is a chain link.
Let me clarify, there was no proffers on this?
Correct,
Not a problem. We're just gonna describe
Well,
what we're
okay.
voting on.
Okay.
yeah, as presented.
Understood. Take a motion to approve case DV-23-05-03, which is address 914 Oak Grove Road. And this would be as presented and submitted in relationship to the development plan that was presented at the Planning Commission. Would y'all like to split all the variances?
I'm trying to think through all 3 of them. Yes, we would, actually. Yes.
Okay.
And so the motion would continue for A, which was a request for a variance to eliminate the buffering requirement along the north and west property boundaries and along the south property boundary, beginning at the southwest property corner, extending east approximately 340 feet.
Okay.
We were gonna modify that to say that he was, we're moving to approve a variance to the buffering requirement to permit
Yeah,
the building as shown, or as shown in the amended development plan.
yeah, it's when he said as presented with the current design plan.
Oh, I see,
Yeah.
yes.
Do I need to redo that, Fred?
Yes, yeah, we're voting on each of these variance requests separately, all right.
That is
And so-
correct.
And the case is tied to the planning commission's approval of the
Development plan.
development plan.
Correct.
So,
This specific.
okay. And you've moved, I will second.
Yeah, was there a second to that motion?
Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Roberts, all right. Okay, all right. So, we're voting on A, the variance, all right? Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes, this portion has been approved. A.
A.
Make
So-
another motion there for item B for case DV 230503, as presented and specific to the development plan presented at the Planning Commission.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Okay. Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes, this has also been approved. You have 180 days to pull your permit for B and A.
Lastly, motion for C, the case DV 230508. And that's in regards to the variance of the tree protection and landscape for exemption to all sections as presented in this case and provided in the development plan.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Alsabrook,
Yes.
Mr. Perkel,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Roberts,
Yes.
and Ms. Hand.
Yes. Also, Part C has also been approved.
Thank you all very much. So much. Appreciate it. See y'all tomorrow.
Thank you. Do we have any communications from staff? Nope.
No.
Except they
Then-
want to leave, that's all they want to communicate. They-
Yes, May the 4th be with you.
Yes. And also with you.
Then I call, I just adjourn today's meeting.